Report.
Everything behind that door.
Everything.
Sensor detects everything you could possibly want.
Welcome to a Tin Dog podcast. This time, talking about the invasion of time. No, I'm not. I'm talking about Matt Smith, 2013, story number 5, Journey to the Centre of the TARDIS. Now, a lot of people out there thought it was called Journey to the Heart of the TARDIS, which is kind of cool and is actually what happens in the story, and probably was a leaked title, but calling it Journey to the Centre of the TARDIS makes more sense. It's got that parallels with Journey to the Centre of the Earth, that whole Jules Verne thing. And let's face it, nothing says Doctor Who like a bit of Jules Verne. One of the big rules of narrative is to give the audience what they want. Now, admittedly, we've been waiting a hell of a long time to get what we want, but yes, let's get what we want. But what do we actually want? What we want is to see the rest of the TARDIS. That's it. Now, your problem is, because we want to see the rest of the TARDIS, there has to be, a reason for it. Narratively speaking, you can't just have an episode of Cribs set on board the TARDIS. You can't just have someone going, and this is where the magic happens, and showing the console room. No, there has to be, narratively speaking, a reason for it. And the reason comes in the shape of, well, the plot. Such as it is. The plot is considerably flimsier than it appears when you're having the episode wash over you. But before I talk about that particular aspect of the plot, something's become more obvious. A lot of people are discussing one aspect of the whole show. The TARDIS doesn't like Clara. Now, I was just putting it back to a sort of quirk of a character. Many people are coming out and saying that the Clara is a TARDIS, or perhaps the TARDIS. We are told time and time again that she is an ordinary girl, but that could just be a chameleon circuit. My money is on her being an ordinary girl and it being something so much more obvious what's going on. But the TARDIS still doesn't like her. The chances of her not liking her because she's fragmented through time or has something to do with the demise of the TARDIS, or at least, well, as seen here, an explosion, makes more sense. Ah, yes, an exploding TARDIS. Now, a lot of people have gone, the TARDIS exploded in Big Bang. Why did it explode? I'm sure that's explained in that episode. And perhaps this is the explosion that is the one seen in Big Bang. I can't see them being connected. I can just see that being one part of the narrative. Because does the TARDIS actually explode? In fact, does any of this episode actually happen? Because the bottom line at the end of the story is that nothing really changed. Okay, one of the brothers' attitudes alters slightly, so the day has some sort of emotional ripple. The chances are the Doctor's remembered. Clara hasn't. And Clara is only the second person in the whole of the story to learn the Doctor's true name. Is Clara the person who'll actually tell it to River Song? Because we've all heard the name of the last episode. I'm sorry, I've rambled and I've gone completely off subject. The subject, of course, is Journey to the Centre of the TARDIS. Now, as any JNT fan will know, every Doctor Who story has to have a monster. No, it does. It really does. It can't function. It can't fulfill its needs of the audience without having a creature. So, Rule 1, give the audience what they want. Rule 2, don't give it to them exactly as they imagine it. Rule 3, there has to be a monster. Well, this story's ticking all of those boxes, because what we want is to see all around the inside of the TARDIS. To do that, we have to have a plot, and we have to have a perceived threat. The threat was fairly mundane. A scavenger ship picking up the remnants of what it thinks is just an escaped pod. In the theme, the meeting at BBC Cardiff, you can imagine the art department going, right, I want it all to be a bit Aliens. And that thing at the beginning, to me, looked very much like a gunship, as seen in the film Aliens. Also, from the very beginning of Alien is the salvage ship picking up Ripley's escape pod. Again, something very similar going on here. These people are workmen in space, more akin to, say, the Robots of Death storyline. And so the plot trundles on. The Doctor wants to rescue Clara. Clara has to wander around the TARDIS. The TARDIS starts defending itself. The TARDIS is in a lot of trouble, more trouble than anyone thinks. The business with having 1 hour to save the day did appear a bit odd, as an episode of Doctor Who itself is only 42 minutes long. Hence the episode 42. So the Doctor had to up the odds to 30 minutes. So all of these things fit very nicely with the plot. A lot of people will have left this going, I feel cheated slightly. I, for one, was expecting the Fourth Doctor's wooden TARDIS console just to turn up in passing. That would have been expensive to build. Much more expensive than a glass shot of, say, a library. Just leave me there, I'll be happy. Oh, how many of us out there just had a little whoop when we saw the history of the Time War? Were you expecting the book to be completely blank? I know I was. Ah, the Time War, that thing best left unsaid. And yes, it was a lovely Potter-esque moment where the Gallifreyan encyclopedia's words started floating around. Ah, such things are what dreams are made of. Although I was expecting another console room to be in this story, I was expecting the Fourth Doctor's wooden one, as I've just said. You do get a moment where the Doctor is in one control room and there is a shadow of another control room so that you can pull Clara from one to another because that ends up replacing it. I did get the feeling that in one of the earlier drafts of the script he was actually in one of the older control rooms, a secondary control room. That would have made people smile a lot, but because he only had the one set, that scene all did and didn't work simultaneously. Perhaps I'm just reading far too much into it because I'm just a big fanboy. And is that the problem? Is that what this story's problem truly is? Not that I can see it as a problem. But as fanboys, what we all have is our own personal private TARDISes and our own personal private heads. They all have a certain look. They all have a certain feel. Our own private TARDISes are so much bigger on the inside than even TV can manage. They did a pretty good job, though. There were moments that annoyed me. Clara managing to run away from an explosion doing a gentle jog was one of them, but then again, that's fine. So yes, the story needed a monster, and the monsters were the lava creatures. Well, so what? We have to accept that stories need monsters. The fact that they were just echoes of themselves in the future made slightly less sense, but all that was made up for by, well, let's call it the Eye of Harmony room, shall we? Now, according to the Eighth Doctor, that's the novelisation of the book of the movie, the Eye of Harmony in board the TARDIS is an aspect of the Eye of Harmony. The Eye of Harmony being a collapsed star controlled by Omega, or collapsed by Omega, which gives the Time Lords all their power. Now, all the rest of the Time Lords are gone, so the chances are this isn't the same star. Also, there's talk of living metal. That would be Validium from Silver Nemesis, but that was such a obscure reference that I don't really think that counts as references. Yes, there were umbrellas in rooms, but they didn't have question mark handles. If they'd wanted a question mark handled umbrella, all they had to do was ask me. I've got one in the garage somewhere signed by Sylvester McCoy. But for every sin that this programme committed, it had a glorious fan moment just for us. And by far the greatest of the fan moments are what I opened the show with. That collection of audio from all periods of history shoved together. Yes, that makes up for there not being an obvious Fourth Doctor thing, and yes, the scarf appeared in the first story. What we had here is something with the feel of Invasion of Time. The feel of a story that had something happen in it that hadn't happened before. The Fourth Doctor story, The Invasion of Time, was a story where people wandered round the TARDIS, and you got to see different corridors and areas, and finally we've seen the swimming pool. And so I know this story will have appealed to many people, will have disappointed some, will have made other people very, very happy. But the Doctor and Clara are now on board 100% as companion and Doctor, and that works. Because very shortly, it's going to get a lot more stressful. Clara may be an ordinary girl, but what's going to happen to her may not be ordinary. Soon we'll have Sontarans, Cybermen, and that mystery story, and then all the way through to November. This season is proving to be marvellous. Thanks for joining me on the ride. Oh, in case you want to hear me talk about this story a little bit more, I'm over on the Doctor Who podcast. Right now, I think. Go on, download it, give it a listen. Be seeing you. You've been listening to the Tin Dog podcast. Doctor Who and its connected properties are copyright and trademark of the BBC. No infringement is intended. To contact the show, email tin-dog@hotmail.co.uk. Whostrology, a Time Traveller's Almanac, is available through Telos Publishing or Amazon. Visit www.whostrology.com for further information. The Tin Dog podcast is a founder member of the Doctor Who Podcast Alliance.